The rancher did not know the wounded man's name when he first knelt beside him, only that the stranger's breathing was shallow and uneven, and that every instinct in his body told him to help or live, forever with the weight of that choice. The sun was sinking low, staining the plains with a dull copper glow, and the cattle had gone quiet in that unsettling way animals do when something is wrong. He took off his hat, dipped his canteen, and slowly tipped water toward the cracked lips of the injured native man. The man flinched at first, fingers twitching near the dirt as if even kindness had once been a trick meant to kill him. But then the water touched his mouth and something changed. His throat worked weakly, his eyes fluttered, opened just enough to reveal a depth of pain the rancher had never seen before. There was an arrow wound high in the shoulder, badly infected, and another gash across the ribs that looked like it had been made by a blade. Whoever had done this had left him to die alone in the open, where vultures would soon circle and history would forget him. The rancher swallowed hard, aware that helping this man could bring trouble, maybe even death. But some lines, once crossed, could never be uncrossed, and walking away now would mean abandoning more than just a stranger. It would mean abandoning himself. He spoke softly, not knowing if the man understood his words or just the tone, and promised water, rest, and no harm. The native man's eyes fixed on his face, searching for lies the way hunted people learn to do, and after a long moment, his tense body loosened just enough to accept another swallow. The rancher tore a strip from his shirt to press against the wound, his hands shaking despite years of hard work and danger on the frontier. Blood seeped through the cloth, warm and dark, and the rancher cursed under his breath, knowing infection could take the man even if the bleeding stopped. He glanced toward the horizon again, half expecting riders to appear at any moment. Either the men who had caused this, or worse, soldiers or settlers who would see the scene and make assumptions, with rifles instead of words. Still, he lifted the wounded man carefully, feeling how light he was, how hunger and hardship had already taken their toll, and carried him toward a small shack near the edge of the ranch where he stored tools and supplies. Inside the shack, the air smelled of leather dust and old wood. The rancher laid the man on a rough bed of blankets and set to work cleaning the wounds with boiled water and what little antiseptic he had. The native man groaned softly, sweat beading on his brow, but he did not strike or pull away, which felt like trust, fragile and rare. As the rancher worked, he noticed symbols etched faintly into a small leather band around the man's wrist, markings that spoke of a tribe, of belonging, of a life that extended far beyond this lonely ranch. A thought crept in, heavy and unavoidable. Someone would be looking for him. Tribes did not simply abandon their wounded, not unless the situation was desperate beyond words. That thought made the rancher's stomach tighten, because desperation often rode fast and arrived armed. Night fell, and with it came the sounds of the plains. Coyotes calling in the distance, the wind whispering through dry grass like voices of the past. The rancher stayed awake, feeding the man small sips of water, changing the bandages, and watching his chest rise and fall. Memories surfaced uninvited. Memories of stories told in saloons, of raids and reprisals, of hatred passed down like inheritance. He had never been part of that cruelty, but he had benefited from the land taken, the silence bought with blood. Sitting there now, he wondered if this moment was some kind of reckoning, a chance to choose differently, even if the cost was high. Near dawn, the wounded man stirred and spoke a single word in his language, a word the rancher did not understand but felt all the same, because the tone carried gratitude, fear, and warning all at once. When the sun rose, it brought heat and a sense of exposure. The rancher stepped outside to check his cattle and scan the horizon, and that was when he saw it, far off at first. A thin line of movement against the land. Dust rose in the distance, not the lazy kind kicked up by cattle, but sharp, purposeful plumes that meant horses, many of them moving fast. His heart pounded as he counted silhouettes. 1, 2, then too many to number easily. He went still, every muscle tense, knowing this was the moment that would define what came next. He could run, hide, or prepare to explain himself to people who might already be prepared for war. Behind him, inside the shack, the wounded man let out a faint sound, as if he sensed what was coming even in his weakened state. The riders grew closer, and now the rancher could see them clearly. Men painted and armed, moving with the fluid unity of those who had ridden together since childhood. This was no small search party. This was an entire tribe on the move, elders and warriors alike, and they were coming straight toward his land. The rancher raised his hand slowly, stepping away from his rifle, making his body a statement before any words could be spoken. His mouth was dry, but he stood his ground, because turning away now would look like guilt, and fear, he had learned, often invited violence. The first riders reached him, horses snorting, eyes sharp, and the air felt like it might crack under the weight of what could happen next. They spoke among themselves in quick, urgent phrases, eyes darting from the rancher to the shack and back again. One older man rode forward, his face lined with years of wisdom and loss, and fixed the rancher with a gaze that felt like it could see straight through bone and into the soul. The rancher pointed slowly toward the shack and said the only truth he had, that he found a wounded man dying on the plains and gave him water, nothing more and nothing less. For a moment that felt endless. No one moved. Then the older man dismounted and walked past the rancher without a word, pushing open the shack door. Inside, the wounded man struggled to sit up, his strength returning just enough to recognize his people. Voices rose, urgent and emotional, and the sound of relief cut through the tension like light through clouds. The older man knelt beside him, placing a hand on his chest, listening, then looked back at the rancher with an expression that was no longer suspicion alone. It was something heavier, something like respect mixed with caution. Outside, the other riders waited, hands still near weapons, but no one attacked. Not yet. The older man stepped back out and spoke slowly, choosing words the rancher could understand, explaining that the wounded man was the son of a respected family, attacked during a brutal skirmish that had left many dead. He said that giving water to an enemy was considered a sacred act among his people, one that could not be ignored or repaid lightly. The rancher felt his knees weaken, not from fear this time, but from the realization that his simple choice had rippled outward into something far larger than himself. He nodded, unsure what else to do, and said he did what any man should do when another is dying. The older man studied him for a long moment, then nodded once, sharply, as if sealing an unspoken agreement. As the tribe prepared to move the wounded man, carefully lifting him onto a stretcher made of hides and poles, the rancher knew this was not an ending but a beginning. Whatever peace or danger followed would be shaped by this moment, by the water shared between strangers on a dusty plain. The riders mounted again, forming a protective circle, and before they left, the older man turned back and said this act would not be forgotten, not by their people, not by the land itself. The tribe rode away, dust swallowing them once more, leaving the rancher alone, with the echo of hooves and a heart that felt forever changed. If this story has pulled you in, if you can feel the tension and humanity in this moment, make sure you subscribe to the channel, because what happens next will test loyalty, courage, and the true meaning of honor in ways you won't expect. The next part of this chapter will reveal the consequences of that single act of kindness, and you won't want to miss it.